She was a waitress with a bum leg who stumbled and fell right at the feet of a mafia kingpin, begging him not to hurt her because she couldn't run away. He looked down at her and saw his own deceased sister, who'd suffered the same kind of injury. Little did she know, his act of mercy would instantly paint a target on her back, making her fair game for every enemy looking to take him down. The lunchtime rush at Billionaire had just wound down when a fleet of black SUVs screeched to a halt outside. Clara was busy wiping down table 7, her left leg dragging slightly as she navigated between the chairs. The spinal injury she'd sustained in a car wreck 2 years prior had robbed her of her mobility, her promising nursing career, and almost her will to live, but she'd learned to push through the constant pain. The bills weren't going to pay themselves. "Clara, could you take the wine inventory to the back?" Maria, the new server, asked nervously. The girl was barely out of her teens and still seemed jittery around the customers. "Sure, honey. Just tell me where to stack them." The front door of the restaurant burst open. 6 men in dark, impeccably tailored suits swarmed into the place. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a good 10 degrees. Clara's hands froze on the wine bottle she'd been about to grab. She recognized the type of men instantly. The obscenely expensive shoes, the chillingly cold eyes, the way they carried themselves like predators who owned every single room they entered. The last man through the door made the others look like choir boys. Alessandro Moretti was a towering figure, broad-shouldered, with dark hair slicked back and a jagged scar slicing through his left eyebrow. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Clara made in 6 long months. His sheer presence filled the restaurant like a thick fog. You couldn't see it, but you felt it, choking the very air from your lungs. "Where's Gerardano?" His voice was smooth, almost unnervingly pleasant. That made it even more terrifying. Tony Gerardano, the restaurant owner, emerged from the kitchen, his face ashen. "Mr. Moretti, please. I just need another week. I swear. You said that 5 weeks ago, Tony." Alessandro strolled slowly between the tables, his men fanning out behind him. "My patience isn't exactly infinite, Tony." Clara's heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She'd heard all the rumors. Everyone in this neighborhood had. Alessandro Moretti ran the South Side with an iron fist. Protection money, illegal gambling, lucrative construction contracts. You crossed him, you vanished. You paid him, you stayed in business. Simple arithmetic. But Tony's wife was battling cancer. Clara knew the restaurant was barely staying afloat. "Please, Mr. Moretti." Tony's voice cracked with desperation. "The medical bills, they're absolutely killing us. Sophia's treatments. Your wife's illness isn't my concern, Tony. Your debt is." Alessandro stopped at the bar, running a perfectly manicured finger along the polished wood. $12,000, Tony. That's what you owe for 6 months of protection. I can get you 5 by Friday. You'll get me 12 by tonight, or I'll burn this place to the ground. Maria gasped sharply behind Clara. The wine bottle the girl had been holding slipped from her trembling fingers. Everything seemed to happen at once in a chaotic rush. The bottle shattered against the wine rack behind the bar. Glass exploded in a glittering shower across the floor. Red wine splattered like fresh blood across the pristine white tiles. Maria stumbled backward, her face contorted in stark terror. One of Alessandro's men lunged toward her. Clara didn't think. She just reacted. Wait, she didn't mean to. Clara threw herself between Maria and the approaching thug, her arms spread wide in a protective gesture. She's new here. She's just scared. Please don't. Her bad leg gave way beneath her. The world tilted precariously sideways. Clara's cane clattered away across the wine-slicked floor. She fell hard, her hands barely catching her weight at the last possible second. A searing pain exploded through her spine. She bit back a scream, tears welling up in her eyes. Black leather shoes materialized in her vision, expensive, polished to a mirror shine. Alessandro Moretti crouched down right in front of her. Clara looked up into the coldest eyes she'd ever seen in her life. Dark, calculating, utterly empty. Up this close, she could see the faint scar that bisected his jawline, the gleaming gold cuff links at his wrists, and the complete and utter absence of mercy in his hardened expression. "Please," the word came out as a broken whisper. Tears streamed down her cheeks, fueled by pain, raw fear, and the sheer humiliation of being sprawled out, broken, on the floor. "Please don't hurt me. I can't walk. I can't run." Something flickered across Alessandro's face, a momentary crack in his impenetrable facade. His hand, which had been reaching out toward her, stopped abruptly in midair. His eyes widened slightly, scanning her face as if he were seeing a ghost, his jaw clenched tight. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, he just stared down at her, unblinking. Then he stood up abruptly. "Get her up," he said quietly. One of his men helped Clara to her feet, surprisingly gentle, retrieving her cane. She clutched it with shaking hands, her legs screaming in protest. Alessandro turned his attention to Tony. "How much?" I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti. I'll have. How much is the total debt?" "Everything. The back rent, the protection fees, all of it." Tony's mouth opened and closed, soundlessly. 18,000. "But Mr. Moretti." Alessandro pulled out his phone and typed something into it. "Account number." "I don't understand." "Your account number." Tony rattled off the numbers with trembling lips. Clara watched in disbelief as Alessandro made the transfer, then showed Tony the confirmation screen. The restaurant owner's legs nearly buckled beneath him. "It's paid." Alessandro's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "All of it. We're done here." His men exchanged confused glances, clearly taken aback by this unexpected turn of events. One started to protest. "Boss, we can't just—" "Did I stutter?" Alessandro's tone could have cut through solid glass. The man fell silent immediately, backing down. Alessandro looked at Clara one more time. His expression was completely unreadable. Anger, confusion, something raw, and deeply painful that she couldn't quite identify. Then he turned and started walking back toward the door. "Wait!" Clara's voice was barely audible, a desperate plea. "Why?" He stopped, but didn't turn around. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Someone who deserved better than what she got." Then he was gone. The SUVs roared away from the curb, leaving behind nothing but scattered shards of glass, spilled wine, and a restaurant full of people who couldn't quite believe what they just witnessed. Tony collapsed heavily into a chair, his phone screen still glowing with the transfer confirmation. Maria was openly sobbing. "Oh my God, Clara. I'm so incredibly sorry. I didn't mean to drop it. It's okay." Clara's legs felt like they were filled with water. She lowered herself carefully into the nearest chair, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this whole situation was even remotely okay. The most dangerous man in the entire city had just shelled out $18,000 because a crippled waitress had begged him for mercy. Clara looked down at her trembling hands and wondered just what in the hell she'd just started. Clara didn't manage to sleep a wink that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alessandro Moretti's face in her mind. The way his expression had shifted, ever so slightly, from cold, calculated menace to something almost vulnerable when she'd begged him not to hurt her. The way he'd just walked away after paying out nearly $20,000 like it was mere pocket change. "You remind me of someone." "Who?" And why did that someone's memory hold enough power to so drastically change a devil's mind? By 8 in the morning, her phone was buzzing nonstop. "Clara, you are not going to believe what people are saying." Her brother Daniel's voice was tight with worry and concern. "Half the neighborhood thinks you're sleeping with the mob boss. The other half thinks you're his new, protected something. You need to stay away from that restaurant. Stay away from him." "Danny, I didn't do anything." "I know what you didn't do, but it doesn't even matter what's true. It only matters what people think." He paused for a long moment. "I'm coming over tonight. We need to talk about this face to face." The line went dead. Clara arrived at Billionaire at precisely 10 a.m. for her scheduled shift. The very moment she walked through the door, the normally bustling kitchen fell completely silent. Tony practically rushed over to her, his eyes red and puffy from lack of sleep. Clara, thank God you're here. I honestly didn't know if you'd even come back after yesterday. Why wouldn't I? Because, he gestured helplessly around the restaurant. Because of what happened. Because of him. Maria appeared from the back, her expression unusually strange and guarded. Everyone's talking about it. Clara, my cousin called me this morning. He works over at Cell's Deli on 4th Street. He said, Alessandro Moretti never, and I mean never, lets anyone off the hook. Not in 15 years. So why did he let you guys off? David, the line cook, leaned against the door frame, his tone far from friendly. Why'd he pay our debt? Clara, what did you do to make that happen? I didn't do anything. You must have done something. David's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Men like that don't just hand out charity for nothing. What did you promise him, David? Tony snapped, his voice sharper. That's enough. Is it, though? David crossed his arms stubbornly. Because now everyone knows this place is somehow connected to Moretti. You think that's good for business, Tony? You think our regular customers are going to want to eat somewhere the Mafia owns? He doesn't own us, Tony protested weakly. Does he? David laughed. A short, bitter sound. He paid our debt. That automatically means we owe him. And somehow that debt runs directly through her. He pointed a condemning finger directly at Clara. So yeah, I want to know exactly what she promised him in return. Get back to work, Tony said firmly, trying to regain control of the situation. But Clara could see the same question, the same seed of doubt, lurking in his eyes too. The lunch shift was pure torture. Some of the staff treated her like she was made of the thinnest, most fragile glass. Overly polite, almost painfully nervous, as if she might somehow call down Moretti's wrath upon them if they so much as looked at her the wrong way. Others, like David, shot her dark, resentful looks and whispered pointedly when she passed by. Maria apologized at least 17 times. This is all my fault. If I hadn't dropped that stupid bottle. It's not your fault, Clara said wearily for the 18th time. But even Maria was looking at her differently now, as if Clara were some strange, foreign object, something potentially dangerous. Around 2 p.m. A regular customer, Mrs. Chun, who came in every Tuesday for minestrone soup, sat down. She ordered quietly, barely making any eye contact with Clara. When Clara brought her the soup, Mrs. Chun leaned in close and whispered conspiratorially. My husband says we shouldn't come here anymore, she said. He says Moretti's protection means trouble. Other families might decide to make moves. She pressed a $20 bill into Clara's hand. I like you, honey, but we just can't come back here anymore. I'm so sorry. She left half her soup uneaten. Across the city, in a luxurious penthouse office overlooking the bustling harbor, Alessandro Moretti was having his own equally difficult morning. Are you paid a restaurant's protection debt? Marco, his oldest and most trusted lieutenant, stood with his arms crossed, his expression grim. $18,000 out of your own personal pocket? I'm fully aware of what I did, Marco. Are you? Marco's voice rose slightly. Because the other families are definitely talking, Alessandro. Russo's people already think you're going soft. The Colibri crew is asking if we're still actually collecting protection money or if all they need is a sob story and a pretty girl. Alessandro's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching near his temple. Watch your tone, Marco. I'm watching our entire investment go up in flames. Alessandro. Marco leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. We built this empire on fear and respect. Nothing else. You show mercy to one struggling restaurant and suddenly everyone thinks they can start negotiating with us. They think they can just beg their way out of paying. Nobody will think that. They already do, Alessandro. Marco slammed his hand down hard on the desk. Polly got a call this morning from that hardware store down on Mitchell Street. They want an extension, said, if you can forgive Giordano's debt, surely you can give them a little more time. You see what's happening here? It's starting. Alessandro stood slowly, his movements deliberate. When he finally spoke, his voice was like ice. Tell Polly that Giordano was a very special circumstance. Tell the hardware store on Mitchell Street they pay up by Friday or they lose the whole damn store. And tell everyone else that my so-called mercy isn't a new policy. It's nothing more than an exception. Just one exception. Are we clear on that? Marco hesitated, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. What was so special about that particular circumstance? Alessandro? Alessandro turned to face the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. That's none of your concern, Marco. It is if it makes you vulnerable, boss. Get out of my office, Marco. Get out now. After Marco had left, Alessandro pulled out his cell phone. He navigated to a photo he kept hidden in a locked, password-protected folder. It was a picture of his sister Lucia, taken 15 years earlier. She was smiling brightly despite sitting in a wheelchair, despite the debilitating spinal injury that had stolen her ability to walk. She'd been dead for 12 long years. Killed by a drunk driver. Wrong place, wrong time. He had killed the drunk driver, of course, slowly and painfully, but it hadn't brought Lucia back. Yesterday, when that waitress had fallen at his feet, whispering those same haunting words, "I can't walk," it had been like Lucia's ghost had materialized right there in front of him. The same dark, almost black hair. The same kind of desperate courage shining in her eyes. The same broken body trying to protect someone else from harm. He'd paid that debt for Lucia, not for Clara. But even as he thought it, he knew deep down it was a lie. Alessandro made a phone call. "Vinny, I need you to run a background check on someone. Clara. I need her last name." "Who is this?" "The waitress from yesterday, Vinny. Billionaire. Find out everything there is to know about her." He hung up the phone and stared out at the vast city below. One exception, he had told Marco. But Alessandro had the sinking, undeniable feeling that this particular exception was going to end up costing him much more than just $18,000. 3 days after the incident, Alessandro Moretti walked back into Billionaire restaurant. Clara was in the middle of refilling the salt shakers when the door opened. She looked up and froze, her heart leaping into her throat. Her hands locked so tightly around the glass shaker that she actually heard it crack under the pressure. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him on either side. She recognized one of them from before. The other was a new face, with equally cold eyes and the distinct outline of a gun-shaped bulge visible beneath his jacket. But it was Alessandro who still commanded the entire room, effortlessly. He was wearing a navy blue suit today. No tie, and the top button of his shirt was undone. Somehow that made him look even more dangerous, not at all less so. "Mr. Moretti." Tony appeared from the kitchen, his voice barely a strangled whisper. We weren't expecting you. "I'm here to check the accounts." Alessandro's tone was all business. "I want to make sure the books are completely clean, now that your debt has been settled, of course." "The accounts are fine, Mr. Moretti. I promise you." "I'll be the judge of that," Alessandro said flatly. His eyes swept across the entire restaurant and finally landed on Clara. Something flickered across his face, too fleeting for her to identify. "I'll wait while you get the paperwork together. That booth over there?" He pointed to the corner table, the one with a clear, unobstructed view of the entire restaurant. Tony practically ran to his tiny office in the back. Alessandro slid into the booth. His men immediately took up strategic positions near the main door and the kitchen entrance. Clara realized with a jolt that they could see every single entrance, every single exit. This wasn't really about checking accounts. This was a blatant show of ownership and power. Clara tried desperately to focus on her work, but her hands trembled uncontrollably as she arranged the menus on the tables. She could physically feel his eyes on her, watching, studying, dissecting her every move. Maria approached her, whispering urgently. "He keeps looking at you, Clara. What in the world is going on here? I honestly don't know. Should I take that section?" "No." Clara didn't know exactly why she said it, but she felt strangely compelled. "I'll handle it." She picked up a water pitcher and walked over to his table. Her cane clicked loudly against the tile floor with each step she took. The sound seemed amplified, way too loud, in the hushed, tense atmosphere of the restaurant. "Water?" Her voice came out much steadier than she actually felt. "Please." His eyes never left her face for a second. She poured the water carefully, acutely aware of how incredibly close his hand was to hers. Would you like to see a menu, Mr. Moretti? I'm not here for the food, Clara. Her heart hammered even harder. Then what exactly are you here for? Sit down, Clara. Not a request, a direct order. Clara glanced nervously at Tony's office door, which was still firmly closed. She lowered herself slowly into the opposite seat, gripping her cane tightly for support. Mr. Moretti, if this is about your misplaced sense of the injury, he interrupted her smoothly. How did it happen? The abrupt question caught her completely off guard. A car accident 2 years ago, she replied. Drunk driver, texting, you know the drill. She ran a red light and hit my car broadside. Clara's throat tightened at the painful memory. I used to be a nurse. Night shift at County General. I was just driving home after a long shift. Alessandro's jaw clenched tightly. Spinal damage, he stated, not asked. L4, L5 compression fracture. The surgery helped, somewhat. But, she gestured down at her ever-present cane. This is pretty much as good as it's going to get. You were a nurse? I am a nurse still. Just not a practicing one, she clarified. Can't exactly stand for 12-hour shifts anymore, she said. A bitter note crept into her voice. Lost my career, my apartment, all my savings paying off those huge medical bills. But hey, at least I'm still alive, right? Where's your family? The intensely personal questions were starting to make her deeply uncomfortable. Why does that even matter to you, Mr. Moretti? Just answer the question, Clara. Hearing her first name spoken in his voice sent a sudden chill straight down her spine. Just my brother, Daniel, she said quietly. Our parents died when we were very young. Danny pretty much raised me. She met his gaze directly. Now it's my turn to try to take care of him. Why are you even asking me all these questions? Alessandro leaned back in the booth, his expression completely unreadable. You protected that girl, the one who dropped the wine. You obviously knew what my men were capable of doing, and you still just stepped right in front of them anyway. She was clearly terrified. You could barely even stand on your own 2 feet. You were in constant pain, but you still tried to shield her from harm. His voice dropped even lower. Why, Clara? Because she's only 20 years old, and she was clearly scared out of her mind. And it was just an accident. Clara's own voice began to rise defensively. Because someone had to do it. Because that's exactly what you do when someone else is in serious trouble and needs help. You help them, period. Even if you're broken yourself, especially then. A heavy silence stretched out between them, thick with unspoken emotion. My sister had a spinal injury as well, Alessandro said quietly, his gaze fixed on some distant point only he could see. Born with it. She could never walk without crutches or a wheelchair. People stared at her all the time, pitied her, treated her like she was somehow less of a person. His hands curled into tight fists on the polished tabletop. But she was actually stronger than anyone else I've ever known. Braver, too. She'd throw herself right in front of oncoming danger if it meant protecting someone weaker than herself. Clara's chest tightened with a sudden surge of emotion. What happened to her, Mr. Moretti? She died 12 years ago, Alessandro said softly. His eyes held an ocean of pain within them. She was crossing the street. Some drunk driver hit her. She never even had a chance to run. I am so sorry. Don't be sorry, Clara. Just be alive. He stood up abruptly. Tony! The restaurant owner rushed out from his office, nervously clutching a stack of account ledgers. Yes, Mr. Moretti? Forget the books, Tony. I've seen everything I needed to see right here. Alessandro pulled out his wallet, extracted several bills, and dropped them onto the table. Easily $300 at the very least. This restaurant is under permanent protection now, he stated. No charge, Tony. My men will check in on you weekly. If anyone gives you any trouble, customers, suppliers, other families, anyone at all, you just call this number. He handed Tony one of his personal business cards. Tony's mouth fell open in disbelief. Mr. Moretti, I can't possibly accept this. This is far too generous. It's not about generosity, Tony. It's just business, Alessandro said flatly. But his eyes were locked on Clara when he said it. Consider it a smart investment, Tony. His men exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, the cold-eyed one, looked openly suspicious of the whole situation. Alessandro walked toward the door, then paused briefly beside Clara's table. He didn't actually look directly at her, but spoke loud enough for only she could hear. There's a physical therapy center on Madison Street. They're absolutely the best in the entire city. I've already made arrangements for an initial evaluation. No cost to you. I can't accept this, Mr. Moretti. You haven't actually accepted anything just yet, Clara. I simply made a phone call. He finally turned to face her directly, his eyes intense. They'll call you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. What you choose to do with that phone call is entirely your own choice. Why are you doing any of this? For just a fleeting moment, something raw and undeniably honest crossed his face. Because watching you fall reminded me, quite painfully, that I simply couldn't save her, he began to explain. But he seemed to catch himself, stopping abruptly. The call will come tomorrow at 9 a.m., he repeated. Then he was gone, his men trailing silently behind him like dark shadows. The restaurant erupted in a flurry of excited whispers and speculation the moment the door had closed firmly behind them. Clara sat frozen in the booth, staring at the $300 lying on the table, her mind absolutely reeling. Daniel was definitely going to lose his mind over this. The conference room in Alessandro's personal headquarters was thick with the lingering smell of expensive cigar smoke and palpable tension. 8 men were seated around the large mahogany table, his most trusted lieutenants, the ones who'd helped him build this entire empire with blood, sweat, and bullets. Marco stood stiffly at the head of the table, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his face carved from granite. Beside him sat Rocco Dinelli, a younger, more ambitious lieutenant with a hungry fire burning in his eyes. The others watched Alessandro with varying degrees of open concern and thinly veiled disapproval. We need to talk about the restaurant, Marco said flatly, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Alessandro poured himself a generous glass of scotch. Neat. What about it? What about it? Rocco leaned forward aggressively. Boss, you personally paid off someone's debt. You put a civilian-owned business under permanent, free protection, without even consulting us. In just the past 3 days, we've already had at least 7 other establishments ask for the exact same kind of special consideration that Billionaire got. And what exactly did you tell them? We told them to pay up what they owed or get ready to close down, Marco replied grimly. But it's becoming increasingly difficult to enforce when everyone's heard that you've gone soft all of a sudden for some random waitress with a sad sob story. Alessandro's hand tightened sharply on his crystal glass. Watch your damn mouth when you're talking about me, Marco. We're watching our entire business empire slowly begin to collapse right before our very eyes. Alessandro. Rocco interjected, his tone respectful, but his eyes still held a definite challenge. The Calibri family is already circling like vultures. Russo's crew is starting to make noise and cause trouble. They all smell weakness in the air, boss. They think you're beginning to lose your edge. Let them think whatever they want to believe. We simply can't afford that luxury anymore. Alessandro. Marco slammed his fist down hard on the table, rattling the glasses. This organization runs solely on fear and respect. Nothing else. You showed mercy, public, highly visible mercy. That makes you look weak, Alessandro. And it inevitably makes us all look weak in the process. I made one single exception, Marco. Exceptions are just cracks in the foundation, boss, Rocco interrupted. And cracks are known to spread rapidly. Today it's just one little restaurant. Tomorrow, someone else tries to bargain with you by using tears and sad excuses. Where does it ultimately end, Alessandro? Silence fell heavily over the entire room. Vinny, the oldest and perhaps wisest of the lieutenants, cleared his throat nervously. Boss, we're certainly not trying to question your judgment, but the streets are definitely talking about this situation. Your enemies are watching you every single moment of every day. Some of us actually think, he hesitated for a long moment. Some of us think that maybe we should just quietly correct this unfortunate mistake. Alessandro's eyes turned to hard, glacial ice. Corrected how, Vinny? Tell me exactly what you mean by that. The restaurant, boss. Vinny refused to meet his gaze directly. Make it look like we suddenly changed our minds on the whole situation. Send a very clear message out that any apparent mercy was strictly temporary and most definitely conditional. Maybe just rough up the owner a little bit. Trash the place just a little bit. No, Alessandro said flatly. I said no. He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. That restaurant stays protected, he stated in an unwavering tone. Anyone who even thinks about touching it answers directly to me personally. Are we crystal clear on that point? Marco's jaw clenched tightly. And the waitress, boss? The one you're reportedly paying the medical bills for? That's strictly my own personal business, and no one else's. It automatically becomes our business when it starts negatively affecting our normal day-to-day operations. Rocco said smoothly, his eyes gleaming. Boss, we all respect you deeply. We followed you loyally for years, through thick and thin. But this particular woman, whoever she is fast becoming a serious liability to us. The other families are already starting to ask pointed questions. How long will it be before someone decides to use her as leverage to get to you, boss? Then we will simply protect her as well, Alessandro replied. Why Alessandro? The question came unexpectedly from Tony Greco, a quiet lieutenant who rarely ever spoke up in these meetings. Boss, why are you doing this? What's so special about this specific woman that you would risk absolutely everything we've worked for to protect her? Alessandro's hand instinctively moved to his inside jacket pocket, where he kept the cherished photo of his deceased sister, Lucia. He didn't actually pull it out this time. These men knew all about his sister, of course. They'd attended her funeral service, paid their obligatory respects to him and his family, but they simply didn't understand the depth of his feelings. They'd never be able to truly understand. She just reminds me of someone I failed in the past, he said quietly, his voice barely audible. Someone that I simply couldn't save. This time I can actually do something. This time it'll get you killed. Alessandro, Marco said flatly, his voice low and menacing. Or even worse than that, it'll get us all killed in the process. The other families see any form of compassion as nothing more than a sign of obvious weakness. They'll undoubtedly move against us sooner rather than later. Let them just try it, Alessandro challenged. Rocco exchanged a quick, knowing glance with Marco. Boss, maybe you should seriously consider taking some time and some distance away from this complicated situation. Marco suggested smoothly. Let us handle the restaurant and, yes, even the woman. You've got much bigger concerns right now, boss. The shipment that's scheduled to arrive next week. The upcoming meeting with all the New York families. I'll handle my own concerns, Alessandro snapped. He drained the last of his scotch. This particular conversation is officially over, he declared. The restaurant stays under our full protection. The woman also stays safe and completely unharmed. Anyone who has a real problem with that can feel free to just walk right out that door right now and not bother coming back. No one moved. But the subtle, knowing looks they exchanged said absolutely everything he needed to know. Good, Alessandro said curtly. He headed for the door. Marco, I want security doubled on all of my personal assets immediately. Rocco, you coordinate with our people down at the precincts. I need to know if anyone's been asking any questions about Billionaire Restaurant or anyone who might be even remotely associated with it. On it, boss, Rocco said far too quickly, far too eagerly. After Alessandro had left, the room remained completely silent for a full minute. He's been compromised, Rocco said finally, breaking the tense silence. You all can clearly see it. One woman and suddenly 15 long years of hard-earned reputation mean absolutely nothing to him. He's still the boss, Vinny said cautiously, always playing it safe. We all still follow his orders, no matter what. Even when those orders start to sink the entire ship. Rocco stood abruptly, pacing angrily around the room. My father helped to build this organization from the ground up. I've bled for it for most of my entire life. I'm certainly not going to just sit here and watch it all fall apart simply because Alessandro has inexplicably caught some kind of feelings for some crippled waitress. Marco's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What exactly are you suggesting, Rocco? I'm merely suggesting that we might need to find a way to protect him from himself, Rocco said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. The Colibri family actually reached out to me yesterday, he admitted. It was just a feeler, of course. They merely wanted to know if all the rumors were actually true. If Alessandro has really gone soft all of a sudden. I told them, no, obviously not. Obviously, this isn't true. Obviously, Marco repeated slowly, his tone as flat and dangerous as a loaded gun. But if the boss just keeps on. If we don't shut this up, they won't need rumors. They'll see it themselves. Rocco leaned forward on the table, his gaze intense. Maybe we make our own move. Something small, something subtle. Something that reminds Alessandro why mercy is a dangerous game. We'll show him what happens when you leave doors open, even a crack. You're talking about going behind his back, Tony said, his voice laced with caution. I'm talking about saving this family. Rocco snapped back, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. All we need is the right opportunity, the right pressure point, and he'll snap back to being the man we need him to be. Marco was silent for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. I'm not betraying Alessandro, he finally said, his voice measured. And I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to trust that I have his best interests at heart. Rocco's smile was cold. This woman is a weakness, he stated flatly. Weaknesses can be removed. If Alessandro finds out, he won't. Rocco interrupted, his tone dismissive. Not until it's done, and he's thanking us for it. Rocco straightened his jacket, a predatory glint in his eyes. Just keep doing your jobs, he instructed, his voice sharp. I'll handle the rest. He left the room, already pulling out his phone. In the hallway, he scrolled to a contact labeled personal. He'd gotten the number 2 days ago from a bartender who worked Colibri territory. The boss has a blind spot, he typed, his fingers flying across the screen. Might be worth exploring. The reply came within seconds. Tell us more. Rocco smiled, a cruel, satisfied expression on his face, and kept walking. Behind him, through the closed door, Marco stared at the empty seat where Alessandro had sat on Saturday. God help us all, he muttered under his breath, a sense of foreboding settling over him. The envelope arrived at Clara's apartment on Thursday morning. It was thick, expensive paper delivered by a courier, with no return address. Inside was a letter from Madison Street Physical Therapy Center, the most prestigious rehab facility in the city, the kind of place where athletes and celebrities recovered from career-ending injuries. Dear Miss Rossi, the letter began. You have been selected for our comprehensive spinal rehabilitation program. The evaluation, treatment plan, and all associated costs have been covered by a private benefactor. Your first appointment is scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. Please call to confirm. Clara read it 3 times, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the letter. This was real. This was actually happening. For 2 years, she'd accepted that her cane was a permanent fixture in her life, that the constant pain was her new normal. She'd resigned herself to watching other nurses rush past while she limped through the grocery store, just how life would be now. She'd made peace with it, or at least told herself she had. But this letter cracked that peace wide open, shattering her carefully constructed acceptance. What if she could walk without pain? What if she could stand for a full shift again, helping people, saving lives? What if she could get her life back? She was reaching for her phone, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and disbelief, when her apartment door burst open. Daniel stormed in, his face flushed with anger, his eyes blazing. He was still in his construction company uniform, cement dust clinging to his jeans and work boots. Tell me it's not true, he demanded, his voice tight with suppressed rage. Clara's heart sank. Danny, tell me you didn't accept help from a goddamn mobster, he roared, cutting her off. He threw a newspaper on her kitchen table, the local section folded open to a small article. Moretti Organization extends protection to local restaurant. The headline read. No mention of Clara by name, but anyone in the neighborhood could connect the dots. I didn't accept anything yet, she protested weakly, her voice barely a whisper. Yet? Daniel's voice rose, cracking with disbelief. Clara, are you insane? You know who Alessandro Moretti is? What he does? He paid Tony's debt. Nothing is free with these people, don't you understand that? He paced her tiny living room like a caged animal, his frustration palpable. You think he dropped 18 grand out of the goodness of his heart? Men like that don't have hearts. They have angles, investments. And right now, little sister, you're his investment. He lost someone, she countered, her voice trembling. His sister. She had the same injury I do. I don't care if she had the same face, Daniel snapped, spinning to face her. This is the Mafia, Clara. They're not your friends. They're predators, and you just painted a target on your back by accepting their charity. I haven't accepted, she insisted, clutching her cane tightly. The medical center called me. His voice cracked with a mixture of anger and fear. I'm your emergency contact, remember? They wanted to confirm your appointment Monday. Said everything's been taken care of. Do you understand what that means? You're in his debt now, Clara. And Mafia debts don't get paid with money. Clara stood, her grip tightening on her cane, her knuckles white. What was I supposed to do? She demanded, her voice rising. Say no to the first real chance I've had in 2 years? Yes, easy for you to say. The words erupted from somewhere deep inside her, wounded and raw. You're not the one who can't walk, right? You're not the one who lost everything because some idiot couldn't put down her phone for 5 seconds. You don't live with this pain every single day. Daniel's face softened, his anger giving way to a look of pain and sympathy. Clara, I was a good nurse, Danny, she continued, her voice thick with tears. I helped people. I saved lives. And now I can barely carry a tray of drinks without wanting to cry. Tears burned her eyes, blurring her vision. This is my chance. Maybe my only chance. And you want me to throw it away because the money came from the wrong person? I want you to stay alive. Daniel's voice dropped to almost a whisper, his eyes pleading. I want you to stay safe. And taking favors from Alessandro Moretti is the opposite of safe. Maybe I'm tired of being safe, Clara retorted, wiping her eyes roughly. Maybe I'm tired of being careful and grateful and settling for scraps. He's offering me hope, Danny. When's the last time anyone offered me that? Hope with strings attached, he countered, his voice laced with warning. All hope has strings, she yelled now, months of frustration pouring out of her in a torrent of anger and despair. You think I don't know there's a catch? You think I'm stupid? But at least it's a chance. At least it's something other than this. She gestured wildly at her cane, her small apartment, the life she'd been trapped in for so long. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sank onto her couch, his head falling into his hands, his shoulders slumped with defeat. You have no idea what you're getting into, he said, his voice muffled. Something in his tone, a deep and unsettling fear, made Clara pause. What does that mean? She asked, her voice softer now, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. Nothing, Danny muttered, shaking his head. It means these people are dangerous in ways you can't imagine. He looked up at her, and she was shocked to see genuine, bone-deep fear in his eyes, a fear that transcended her own. Promise me something, he pleaded, his voice raw with emotion. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me if anything feels wrong. If he asks you for anything, you'll walk away. I promise, she said, her voice barely audible. I mean it, Clara, he insisted, his grip tightening on her arm. These men, they seem charming at first. They act like they're helping, but it's always a trap. Always. His voice was so certain, so specific, that Clara couldn't help but wonder what he wasn't telling her. What he knew that he was keeping from her. How would you know? She asked, her eyes searching his face. Daniel stood abruptly, his movements jerky and agitated. Because I'm not an idiot, he snapped. Because I've lived in this neighborhood my whole life. He headed for the door, then stopped, turning back to face her. Call me after the appointment Monday, he said, his voice softer now, laced with concern. I want to know you're okay. I will, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. After he left, Clara picked up the letter again, her hands still shaking. Her first appointment was in 4 days. She called the number, her heart pounding in her chest. Madison Street Physical Therapy, How can I help you? This is Clara Rossi, she said, her voice a little breathless. I'm calling to confirm my appointment Monday at 9 a.m. Wonderful, Miss Rossi, the voice on the other end replied cheerfully. We'll see you then. And may I say, you're very fortunate. Dr. Chin doesn't usually take new patients, but your benefactor was quite insistent on the best care possible. Your benefactor, not a benefactor. You're as if she belonged to him already. Clara hung up and stared at her reflection in the darkened TV screen. A woman with tired eyes and a cane. A woman who'd been offered a miracle by the devil himself. What am I doing? She whispered to her reflection, her voice barely audible. But she already knew the answer. She was accepting because hope, even dangerous hope, was better than slowly dying inside. She'd just have to pray the price wasn't more than she could pay. Outside her apartment, in a car parked half a block down, one of Alessandro's men lowered his camera. He'd photographed Daniel's arrival and departure, captured the argument through the thin walls with a directional microphone. He dialed his boss. Sir, the brother's a problem, he reported, his voice low and professional. He's trying to talk her out of it. Alessandro's voice was cold and hard. Let him try, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. But if he interferes further, I want to know about it immediately. Understood, the man replied. The car pulled away into the night, leaving Clara alone with her hope and her fears. Alessandro sat in his office at 2 a.m., unable to sleep. The city sprawled below him, a grid of lights and shadows stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, Clara Rossi was probably awake, too, staring at that letter, wrestling with the same questions that had been tormenting him for 3 days. Why was he doing this? It wasn't just about Lucia anymore, he knew that. He'd used that excuse with his men, with himself, but the truth was far more complicated. When Clara had looked up at him from the floor, terrified and vulnerable, yet still trying to protect someone else, something inside him had shifted. Something he'd thought had died with his sister. Something that had been buried deep beneath layers of anger and grief. He picked up his phone and called Vinny. Boss, Vinny's voice was groggy, thick with sleep. It's 2 a.m. I need a complete background check, Alessandro said, his voice brooking no argument. Clara Rossi, the waitress from Billionaire. Silence followed, a heavy pause that stretched out between them. Boss, is that wise? Vinny finally asked, his tone hesitant. Getting more involved. I didn't ask for advice, Alessandro snapped, his voice sharp. I asked for information. Everything. Family, employment history, medical records, financial situation. I want to know who she is. You want me to dig into her brother, too? Daniel Rossi? Alessandro frowned. He hadn't mentioned a brother. You know him, Vinny continued, his voice even more hesitant. Another pause, longer this time. Boss, you're not going to like this, Vinny said finally, his voice filled with a sense of foreboding. Tell me, Alessandro demanded. Let me pull the file, Vinny replied. I'll call you back in 10. Alessandro waited, his instincts screaming that whatever was coming would change everything, that the carefully constructed facade he'd built around himself would be shattered. 7 minutes later, his phone rang. Daniel Rossi, Vinny said without preamble, his voice grim. Age 32. Currently works construction for Hendrix Company, but 8 years ago he worked for us. Alessandro sat forward in his chair, his senses on high alert. Doing what? He asked, his voice tight. Low-level runner, Vinny replied. Pickups, deliveries, basic enforcement. He was young, maybe 24. Worked under Marco's crew for about 18 months. I don't remember him, Alessandro said, his brow furrowed in thought. You wouldn't, Vinny said, his voice hardening. He was nobody, just another kid trying to make quick money. Until he wasn't. What did he do? Alessandro asked, his voice low and dangerous. He got greedy, Vinny replied, his voice laced with disgust. Started selling information to the Calabrese family. Shipment schedules, meeting locations, who was paying protection and who wasn't. We didn't catch it for months. Cost us 3 good men and nearly $250,000 in lost product. Alessandro's blood went cold, a wave of fury washing over him. 7 years ago, Summer of 2018. Marco wanted him dead. Vinny paused, his voice heavy. We had a kill order ready, but then he disappeared, went underground. By the time we found him again, his parents had just died in a house fire. He had a teenage sister to raise, Clara. She was only 16. The pieces clicked together in Alessandro's mind with brutal clarity, forming a picture he didn't want to see. Marco decided killing him would leave the girl alone. Vinny continued. She was innocent, just a kid, so we let it go. Told Rossi if he ever stepped foot in our territory again, if he ever came near our business, the protection for his sister ended. He's kept his distance ever since. Alessandro stared at the city lights, his mind racing, trying to process the implications of what he'd just learned. Does he know I'm the one helping her? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. If he doesn't, he will soon, Vinny replied. The whole neighborhood's talking. Vinny's voice dropped, his tone filled with warning. Boss, this changes things. You're protecting the sister of a man who betrayed us. If the other families find out, if Marco finds out. Marco knows about Rossi's betrayal. Alessandro finished the thought, his voice grim. He was the one who caught him. He's the one who wanted him dead. But he doesn't know Rossi is Clara's brother. Not yet. The last name's common enough. But if he digs. Vinny trailed off, leaving the threat hanging in the air. What do you want me to do? Vinny asked, his voice filled with a mixture of loyalty and apprehension. Alessandro stood, walking to the window, his gaze fixed on the sprawling city below. Down below, the city slept, unaware of the bomb that had just been dropped in his lap. The smart move was to cut ties, he knew that. Walk away from Clara. Let the medical appointment cancel. Pretend the last few days had never happened. Daniel Rossi was a traitor, and his sister, by extension, was tainted by that betrayal. In Alessandro's world, that was enough for a death sentence. But Clara didn't know. She'd been 16 when her brother made his mistakes. She had lost her parents, her health, her career, and now she was struggling to survive while her brother, the brother who'd raised her, protected her, carried the weight of his sins in silence. You still there, boss? Vinny's voice broke through his thoughts. Did Clara know? Alessandro asked, his voice barely audible. About her brother's involvement with us? No indication of it, Vinny replied. She was in high school when it went down, focused on getting into nursing school. By all accounts, Daniel kept that life completely separate from her. And after, when he left, he told her he was getting out of construction work, going legitimate. She never questioned it. Vinny paused. Boss, she's innocent in this, but innocent doesn't matter if the wrong people find out. Alessandro's jaw clenched, his teeth grinding together in frustration. The irony was almost poetic, a cruel twist of fate that only seemed to happen in his world. He paid a debt to protect a woman who reminded him of a sister, only to discover she was the sister of a man who'd betrayed him. A man he should have killed years ago. Keep this quiet, Alessandro said finally, his voice hard and decisive. No one else knows about the connection. Not Marco, not Rocco. Nobody. You're still going forward with the medical treatment? Vinny asked, his voice filled with surprise. Yes, boss, Alessandro replied, his voice flat. She's not responsible for her brother's mistakes. And Daniel kept his end of the bargain. He stayed away. Maybe that's penance enough. Or maybe it's a setup, Vinny said carefully. Maybe he sent her into that restaurant knowing you'd be there. Maybe this whole thing is a play. Alessandro had considered that possibility. But he'd seen Clara's face when she fell, heard the genuine terror in her voice. No one was that good an actor. It's not a setup, Alessandro said, his voice firm. She doesn't know what her brother did. And she's not going to. Alessandro turned from the window, his decision made. Continue the background check, he ordered. I want to know everything about her. But the brother connection stays buried. Understood, Vinny replied, his voice professional. And if Daniel makes a move, then we deal with it, Alessandro continued, his voice cold and dangerous. But until then, Clara Rossi is under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. After hanging up, Alessandro pulled out Lucia's photo again. His sister smiled up at him, frozen at 15, forever innocent. What would you do? He whispered to the image, his voice filled with a mixture of love and grief. But he knew the answer. Lucia had always believed in second chances, in judging people by their own actions, not their family's sins. She believed in forgiveness. It had gotten her killed. Alessandro took the photo away and poured another scotch, the amber liquid swirling in the glass. He was protecting the sister of a traitor. If his men found out, it would look like weakness or insanity. If his enemies found out, they'd use it against him, exploit his vulnerability. If Daniel found out, Alessandro knew the fragile peace between them would shatter. But somehow, impossibly, Alessandro didn't care. Clara Rossi had reminded him what it felt like to want to save someone, to offer hope where there was only despair. And for the first time in 12 years, that felt more important than revenge, even if it destroyed him in the process. Monday morning, Clara arrived at Madison Street Physical Therapy Center 15 minutes early, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. The building was sleek glass and chrome, the kind of place that screamed money, power, and exclusivity. The waiting room had plush leather chairs, abstract art on the walls, and a coffee bar with an actual barista. A far cry from the dingy clinics she'd been to in the past. This wasn't a clinic, she realized. This was a spa for broken bodies, a sanctuary for the wealthy and privileged. Ms. Rossi, a woman in pristine white scrubs, approached her with a warm, professional smile. I'm Dr. Chin. Welcome. The evaluation took 2 hours, a grueling series of x-rays, mobility tests, and strength assessments. Dr. Chin was thorough, professional, and optimistic in a way Clara's previous doctors hadn't been. She explained everything clearly, answering all of Clara's questions with patience and understanding. Your bone structure has healed well, Dr. Chin explained, pointing to the scans, her voice calm and reassuring. The issue is muscular compensation and nerve inflammation. With aggressive physical therapy, targeted exercises, and possibly a minor corrective procedure, we could see significant improvement. I'd estimate 60 to 70% mobility restoration. Clara's throat tightened, tears welling up in her eyes. Really? She managed to croak out, her voice filled with disbelief. Really, Dr. Chin replied, smiling warmly. It won't be easy and it won't be quick. But yes, Miss Rossi, I believe we can help you walk without assistance. Clara left the clinic in a daze, clutching a treatment plan and a schedule for 3 sessions per week. Hope felt dangerous and wonderful all at once, a fragile flame flickering in the darkness. She didn't notice the man in the gray sedan parked across the street, or the camera lens pointed at her through the tinted window, recording her every move. 3 blocks away, in a restaurant that fronted for the Calabrese family operations, Tommy the Knife Calabrese studied the photographs his man had just delivered. His eyes narrowed in concentration. That's her, he said, his voice low and gravelly. Tommy flicked through the images, examining each one carefully. Clara entering the clinic. Clara leaving with a folder. Clara struggling to hail a cab with her cane. Doesn't look like much, he muttered, a sneer curling his lip. She's nothing. She's nothing, his Lieutenant Frankie confirmed, nodding in agreement. Waitress. No criminal record. No connections. But Moretti's paying for her medical treatment, top-tier facility, best doctors. Word is he's got men watching her apartment. Tommy leaned back in his chair, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. Alessandro Moretti, the man who killed 3 people for looking at him wrong, is playing guardian angel to a crippled waitress. Hell must have frozen over. Makes him vulnerable, Frankie said, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. We could grab her, send a message. No, Tommy replied, shaking his head, his eyes filled with a dangerous light. Not yet. First we watch. We learn. We figure out exactly how deep this goes. Then we decide how to use it. He tapped one photograph, his finger resting on Clara's face, unguarded and hopeful. Everyone has a weakness. Frankie, he said, his voice soft but menacing. Even the devil. That evening, Alessandro appeared at Bellonate just as the dinner rush ended. Clara was wiping down tables when she saw him, her heart skipping a beat. He was alone this time, no bodyguards in sight, dressed more casually in dark slacks and a black button-down shirt. Somehow that made him more intimidating, not less. "We're closed," she said, her voice a little shaky, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I know," he replied, his eyes fixed on her. "I told Tony to lock up and leave. We need to talk." Clara glanced toward the kitchen, her senses on high alert. It was empty. She was alone with the most dangerous man in the city. "About what?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Alessandro moved closer, his presence filling the small space. Not threatening exactly, just present. "How was your appointment?" he asked, his voice low and calm. So he knew she'd gone. Of course he did. "It went well," she replied, her voice a little stronger now. "Dr. Chin thinks." She stopped, her brow furrowing. "Why are you really here?" Alessandro moved even closer, his eyes searching hers. "Because I wanted to see if you'd actually go," he said, his voice soft, almost gentle. "If you'd accept the help." "Why wouldn't I?" she asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Because your brother told you not to," he said, his gaze unwavering. She saw her expression shift, a flicker of surprise and then anger crossing her face. "I have people watching out for you, Clara," he continued, his voice matter-of-fact. "For your safety. That includes knowing who visits your apartment and what gets said through thin walls." Anger flared in her chest, hot and fierce. "You're spying on me," she accused, her voice rising. "I'm protecting you," he corrected, his voice calm. "From what?" "From people who might see you as a way to get to me." His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "You became a person of interest the moment I paid that debt. Whether you like it or not, you're connected to me now. That puts you in danger." Clara's legs suddenly felt weak, as if they couldn't support her weight any longer. She lowered herself into a chair, her hand gripping her cane for support. "I didn't ask for this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I know," Alessandro replied, his voice softer now. He sat across from her, and for the first time, she saw something human in his eyes, something that transcended the cold, ruthless image he projected. Something tired and sad. "My sister didn't ask for it either," he continued, his voice low and filled with pain. "Didn't ask to be born with a broken spine. Didn't ask for people to stare or pity her. But she made the best of what she had." He paused, his gaze fixed on some distant memory. Her name was Lucia. Clara watched him carefully, her heart aching for the pain she saw etched on his face. "You loved her," she said softly. "She was the only good thing in my family," he replied, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Our father was violent. Our mother was weak. But Lucia..." A faint smile crossed his face, softening his harsh features. She had this laugh, this ridiculous snorting laugh that she hated, but it was so genuine, so joyful. She could barely walk, but she'd insist on dancing at weddings. She'd stumble, fall, laugh it off, and keep going. "How old was she?" Clara asked, her voice filled with compassion. 15, when she died," he replied, his hands curling into fists on the table, his knuckles white. "A drunk driver," he added, his voice filled with a barely suppressed rage. "She was crossing the street to buy flowers for her mother's birthday. The driver ran a red light. She never even saw it coming." Clara's chest ached with sympathy for the young girl he'd lost, for the pain that still haunted him after all these years. "That's why you..." "When I fell," she said, her voice filled with understanding. "You looked like her," he interrupted, his gaze meeting hers, his eyes filled with a raw vulnerability. "Same dark hair. Same determination in your eyes. Same stubborn courage." Alessandro met her gaze. "When you tried to protect that girl, even though you were hurt, even though you were terrified. That's exactly what Lucia would have done." Silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid, filled with the weight of loss and regret. "I'm not your sister," Clara said softly, breaking the silence. "I know," Alessandro replied, his voice tinged with sadness. "And I can't be your second chance at saving her." "I know that, too." Alessandro leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "But maybe you can be your own second chance," he said, his voice filled with a surprising tenderness. "Maybe you can take what I'm offering and rebuild your life." Not for me, but for you. Clara studied his face, the sharp angles, the scar that bisected his eyebrow, the weight of violence and grief he carried like a shroud. He was a monster, everyone said so. But monsters didn't talk about their sisters with tears in their eyes. Why do you do it? She asked suddenly, her voice barely audible. The violence, the protection rackets, all of it. Because it's all I know, he replied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Because my father taught me that power is the only thing that matters. He smiled bitterly. And because good men die young. I decided a long time ago to be the man others fear instead of the man who gets destroyed. Is that what your sister would have wanted? She asked, her voice soft but insistent. The question hit him like a physical blow, silencing him instantly. He stood abruptly, pushing his chair back with a screech. I should go, he said, his voice strained. Alessandro, she said, her voice stopping him in his tracks. He stopped, his name and her voice freezing him in place. Thank you, Clara said quietly, her eyes filled with gratitude. For the treatment, for protecting the restaurant, for seeing me when you could have just walked past. He turned back, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It wasn't cold anymore or distant or calculating. It was raw and complicated, and dangerous in an entirely different way, a look that spoke of something she couldn't quite decipher. Be careful, Clara, he said, his voice low and filled with warning. People are watching you now. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't trust strangers. And if anything feels wrong, anything, you call me. He placed a card on the table with a phone number, his fingers brushing against hers. Day or night. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving her alone with the ghost of his sister and the weight of his protection. Outside in the gray sedan parked down the block, Frankie snapped another photograph, his lips curling into a satisfied smirk. The boss was going to love this. Alessandro was reviewing shipping manifests when Marco burst into his office without knocking, his face grim and tense. We have a problem, he announced, his voice urgent. Marco threw a manila folder on the desk, the thick stack of papers inside thudding heavily on the polished surface. Big one, he added, his eyes filled with concern. Alessandro opened the folder, his blood turning to ice as he recognized the contents. Inside were surveillance photos, professionally taken and meticulously organized. Clara leaving her apartment, Clara at the clinic, Clara at Bellonate. Different angles, different days, each image sharp and clear. Where did you get these? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. One of our guys in the Calabrese crew, Marco replied, his voice grim. Tommy's planning something. He's had men on the Waitress for 3 days now. How many men? Alessandro demanded, his grip tightening on the folder. At least 4 that we've identified, Marco replied. Could be more. Marco pulled out another photo, handing it to Alessandro. This one showed Clara and Alessandro talking inside Bellonate through the window, their faces clearly visible. They've got documentation of your visits, Marco continued, his voice laced with warning. They're building a file. Alessandro's jaw clenched, the muscles in his face tightening until his jaw ached. What's the play? He asked, his voice barely audible. They're going to grab her, Marco replied, his voice grave. Use her as leverage or humiliation. Maybe both. Tommy wants to prove you're weak, that emotions make you sloppy. Marco's voice dropped, his eyes meeting Alessandro's with a look of profound concern. And boss, he's not wrong. You've been visiting her, paying her medical bills. The whole city knows she's your soft spot now. When? Alessandro asked, his voice sharp. Soon, Marco replied. Maybe this week. Marco sat down heavily, his shoulders slumped with worry. There's more, he added, his voice even more serious now. Rocco's been making calls. Alessandro's eyes snapped up, his gaze piercing. What kind of calls? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. To the Calabrese family, Marco replied, his voice laced with anger. To some of Russo's people. He's been testing the waters, seeing who'd be interested in new leadership if you keep making questionable decisions. Betrayal tasted like copper in Alessandro's mouth, a bitter, metallic tang that filled him with a cold, burning rage. You have proof? he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Phone records, Marco replied, pulling out another file. Witness statements. Yeah. I've got proof. Marco yanked out another folder. I was gonna come to you about Rocco first, but then this whole Clara situation blew up and he just stopped. Boss, some of the guys are with him on this. Which guys? Does it even matter? The bottom line is, you protecting this woman is causing serious cracks. They see it as a weakness. They think you've lost your edge. Marco leaned in close. There's a simple way to fix this. Let the Calibris family make their play. Let them grab her. Then, you hit back with everything you've got. You wipe out everyone involved, get the girl back, and prove you're still the same stone-cold killer you've always been. Alessandro just stared at him. You want me to use Clara as bait. I want you to turn a problem into a power move. You save her. You look like a badass doing it. Everyone remembers exactly why they're terrified of you. Marco's voice got hard. Or, you keep playing nursemaid to her, keep making exceptions, and watch your empire fall apart while Tommy Calibris and your own right-hand man are plotting your downfall. Get out. Alessandro's voice was dangerously quiet. Get out before I do something we're both gonna regret. Marco took his time leaving. At the door, he stopped. You're choosing her over us. You know that, right? Over everyone who's bled for you, killed for you, built this whole damn thing with you. You're throwing it all away for a woman you've known for a week. I said, get out. After Marco was gone, Alessandro made 3 calls. First, he called Vinny. I want 4 guys on Clara Rossi. 2 undercover, following her everywhere she goes. 2 stationed outside her apartment building, rotating shifts. I want our best guys. Boss, that's a lot of manpower. I don't care. Just make it happen. And Vinny, I want updates every 4 hours. Where she goes, who she talks to, if anyone suspicious gets within 50 feet of her. Understood. The second call was to his arms dealer. I need a clean car, bulletproof, tinted windows, GPS tracker. Have it delivered to. He gave Clara's address. And a driver. Someone she won't recognize as one of ours. The third call was to Clara. She picked up on the second ring. Hello? It's Alessandro. Silence. How did you get my number? I get whatever I need. He softened his voice. Listen to me carefully. For the next few days, I need you to be extra careful. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't take any routes you don't know. Don't talk to strangers. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. He paused. There are people who want to hurt you to get to me. I've got men protecting you, but you need to stay alert. Maybe I should just stop the treatments. Stop coming to the restaurant. If I'm putting people in danger. No. The word came out harsher than he meant. You keep living your life. You keep going to your appointments. I'll handle the rest. Alessandro, I can't. Clara. His voice dropped. I've done terrible things. Hurt people, destroyed lives. But I won't let anyone hurt you. Not while I'm breathing. Do you understand? Another silence, longer this time. Why do you care so much? Because when she smiled, something in his chest loosened. Because when she talked about nursing, her eyes lit up with a passion he'd forgotten existed. Because she'd looked at him like he was human, not a monster. And that single look had cracked something open inside him that he'd kept locked away for years. Because I failed Lucia, he said instead. And I won't fail again. After hanging up, Alessandro stood at his window watching the city. His own men were questioning him. His lieutenant was plotting against him. His enemies were circling. And at the center of it all was a woman with a cane and kind eyes who'd somehow become the most important thing in his world. Marco was right. He was choosing her over the empire, over loyalty, over everything he'd built. And the terrifying part was he'd make the same choice again. His phone buzzed. Vinny, guards in position. She's home safe. Alessandro let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Across town, in a basement that smelled of mold and violence, Rocco met with Tommy Calibris. He's doubled her security, Rocco said, sliding photos across the table. For men, minimum, probably more we haven't spotted. Tommy grinned. Perfect. That means she matters. The more he protects her, the more valuable she becomes. He lit a cigar. We'll need to be smart about this. Can't just grab her off the street now. I might have a way. Rocco pulled out his phone. Her brother, Daniel Rossi, he's been trying to get her to cut ties with Alessandro. What if we reach out to him? Convince him we can help get his sister to safety. He'd trust you? He's desperate and stupid. Yeah, he'd trust me. Rocco smiled. We use the brother to get the sister. Alessandro comes running. He drew his finger across his throat. Tommy laughed. I like it. Make the call. In her apartment, Clara locked the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. She'd noticed the men watching her building, noticed the car that had followed her home from the clinic. She wasn't stupid. This was real. The danger was real. And somewhere in the darkness, Alessandro Moretti was standing between her and people who wanted to hurt her. She should run. She should disappear. She should never have accepted his help. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his face when he talked about Lucia, saw the grief and guilt he carried like weights around his neck. He was trying to save her because he couldn't save his sister. And God help her, she was starting to care about saving him, too. Daniel Rossi had been watching Clara's apartment for 2 hours when he finally spotted them. 2 men in a black sedan, too obvious to be cops, too professional to be random. They watched the building with the stillness of predators, and Daniel knew exactly what they were. Moretti's men. His little sister was under surveillance by the Mafia. The nightmare he'd spent 8 years trying to prevent had finally arrived. He drove away before they spotted him, his mind racing. This was his fault, all of it. If he'd never gotten involved with Alessandro's organization years ago, if he'd never betrayed them, if he'd just stayed clean, Clara would be safe now. But she wasn't safe. She was a pawn in a game. She didn't even know she was playing. Daniel pulled into a parking garage and sat in the darkness, his hands shaking on the wheel. He needed help. He needed someone who could get Clara out of this mess before it consumed her. He scrolled through his contacts and stopped at a name he'd saved 3 years ago, Rocco Dinelli. They'd worked together briefly when Daniel was a runner. Rocco had been lower level then, hungry and ambitious, but not cruel. He'd even warned Daniel once that Marco was getting suspicious. If anyone in Moretti's crew might help him now, it would be Rocco. Daniel dialed before he could talk himself out of it. Yeah. Rocco's voice was cautious. It's Daniel Rossi. I need to talk. A pause. Rossi. Been a long time. Heard you went straight. I did, but now there's a problem. My sister, she's gotten tangled up with your boss. I need to get her out. Rocco's tone shifted, interested now. Clara, right? Pretty girl. Moretti's new obsession. She doesn't know what she's gotten into. I need help getting her somewhere safe. Away from all this. And you're calling me. Why? Because you're smart. Because you know how this world works. Daniel's voice cracked. Because you have a sister, too. You told me about her once. Remember? Silence. Meet me tomorrow night. 10 p.m. The old warehouse on Porter Street. Come alone. Thank you, Rocco. Don't thank me yet. Rocco hung up. Daniel sagged in his seat, relief flooding through him. Rocco would help. He had to. In his penthouse, Rocco smiled as he ended the call. Then he dialed Tommy Calibris. The brother just took the bait. That same evening, Clara was closing the restaurant when Alessandro walked in. We're closed, she said without thinking, then recognized him. Her pulse quickened. You shouldn't keep coming here. People will talk more than they already do. Let them talk. Alessandro locked the door behind him. I needed to see you. Something in his voice made her set down the dish towel. He looked different tonight. Tired. His tie was loosened. There was a weariness in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Human. What's wrong? Everything. He went to the bar, poured himself a scotch without asking. My own men are questioning me. My lieutenants betraying me. My enemies are circling. And at the center of it all is you. Clara's chest tightened. Then let me go. Stop protecting me. Stop paying for the treatments. I can't. Why not? Because you're the first thing I've cared about in 12 years that isn't business or revenge or power. The confession tumbled out like he couldn't hold it back anymore. You unsettle me, Clara. You make me question everything I've built. Everything I am. She moved closer, her cane clicking softly. I'm nobody. Just a broken waitress. You're not broken. You're surviving. He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. When you fell that day, I saw Lucia. But every time since, I've seen you, just you. And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever has. Because you don't know how to care about someone without it being about your sister. Because I don't know how to care about someone without destroying them. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Everyone I've ever loved ends up dead or damaged. My sister, my mother, even my enemies' families. I have orphan children, widowed women. Death follows me, Clara. And now it's following you. Clara set down her cane, stepping closer without support. Her leg protested, but she ignored it. Then why not walk away? Let me live my life. Because I'm selfish. Alessandro's hand came up, almost touching her face, then dropped. Because seeing you get stronger, watching you walk a little easier each week, hearing you laugh with that girl, Maria, it makes me feel human again. And I've been a monster for so long, I forgot what that felt like. The air between them crackled with tension. You're not a monster, Clara whispered. Yes, I am. I've killed people. You saved my restaurant. You're giving me my life back. You protected Maria. She reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. Monsters don't cry when they talk about their sisters. Alessandro's fingers closed around hers. His touch was warm, careful, like he was afraid she'd shatter. You make me want to be better. That's dangerous for both of us. Maybe some dangers are worth it. They stood there, hands linked, the empty restaurant around them feeling like the only safe place in the world. Alessandro's thumb traced circles on her palm, and Clara felt a heat spread through her body that had nothing to do with fear. Clara! His voice was rough. I know she didn't know this was insane. He was Mafia. She was nobody. This could only end in blood and tears. But when he looked at her like that, like she was precious, like she mattered, like she was something worth protecting, she couldn't remember why she should care about the inevitable ending. I should go, Alessandro said, but he didn't move. Yes, Clara agreed, but she didn't step back. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. With a curse, he pulled it out. His expression darkened as he read the message. I have to handle something. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about. But his jaw was tight. Remember what I said. Stay alert. Don't trust anyone. And Clara. He looked at her one more time and she saw fear in his eyes. Actual fear. No matter what happens, know that I... He stopped himself. Just be careful. Then he was gone, leaving Clara alone with her racing heart and the lingering warmth of his hand in hers. Outside, Alessandro read Vinny's text again. Calabrese crew moving assets. Something's happening. Timeline accelerated. They were coming for her soon. Alessandro made a call as he climbed into his SUV. Double the guards. I want 8 men on her. And find out what the Calabrese family is planning. I don't care what it costs. He'd burn the whole city down before he let them touch her. Across town, Rocco hung up with Tommy Calabrese and smiled. Tomorrow night, the brother would lead them right to her, and Alessandro Moretti's empire would finally crumble. Clara's Wednesday physical therapy session ran late. Dr. Chun had been thrilled with her progress. She'd walked 15 feet without her cane during the evaluation. 15 feet of pain and trembling muscles, but 15 feet of freedom. Clara left the clinic at 8:47 p.m. with tears of joy in her eyes and her cane feeling lighter in her hand. The street was quieter than usual. Most businesses had closed. The parking lot was poorly lit, half the overhead lights flickering or dead. Clara fumbled for her phone to call a cab when she heard the footsteps. 3 men emerged from behind a van. Not Alessandro's men. She'd learned to recognize his guards by now. These were different, harder, predatory. Clara Rossi, the one in front, smiled. He had a scar running down his neck. Someone wants to talk to you. Clara's heart slammed into her throat. I don't know you. But we know you. We know you're special to Alessandro Moretti. He moved closer. That makes you special to us, too. Clara backed up, gripping her cane. Stay away from me. Can't do that, sweetheart. Boss's orders. Scar nodded to the others. Grab her. They lunged. Clara swung her cane hard, catching one man across the face. He yelped, stumbling back, but her bad leg buckled, and she nearly fell. The second man grabbed her arm. She screamed, twisting away, but her injury made her slow, weak. His grip was iron. Little fighter, Scar laughed. Moretti likes them with spirit. A car screeched around the corner, high beams blazing. Two men erupted from the vehicle before it fully stopped Alessandro's guards. Clara recognized one of them, Sal, who'd been following her for days. Let her go. Sal's gun was already drawn. Scar pulled out his own weapon, using Clara as a shield. Back off. This is Calabrese business. There's no Calabrese business with her. Everything happened at once. The man holding Clara yanked her harder, trying to drag her toward the van. Pain exploded through her spine. She screamed, her leg giving out completely. She fell to her knees on the pavement, agony white-hot. Gunshots cracked through the air. Sal fired, hitting the man who'd been holding Clara. He dropped with a grunt, blood spreading across his shoulder. The third attacker returned fire, and Clara heard the bullet ping off metal somewhere behind her. She tried to crawl away, but her leg wouldn't cooperate. The world spun in pain and terror. More cars arrived, too many to count. Doors slammed. Men shouted in Italian. The fight escalated into chaos. Fists, gunfire, the sickening sound of bone meeting bone. Then a voice cut through everything like a blade. Where is she? Alessandro. Clara looked up through tears and saw him striding through the carnage like an avenging angel. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt sleeves rolled up, and there was something absolutely terrifying in his eyes. Boss, she's here. She's okay. Sal started. Alessandro's gaze found Clara on the ground, saw her clutching her leg, saw the blood on her palms from where she'd scraped them raw on the pavement. His expression went from fury to murderous. He turned to Scar, who was backing toward the van. You touched her. We were just following orders. Alessandro moved so fast Clara barely saw it. One moment he was 10 feet away. The next his fist connected with Scar's jaw with a crack that made Clara flinch. The man went down hard. Alessandro didn't stop. He hauled Scar up by his collar and slammed him against the van once, twice, 3 times. Who sent you? Each word punctuated with violence. Calabrese. Tommy Calabrese. Scar choked out. We were just supposed to grab her. Bring her. Where? Warehouse on Porter Street. Please. I'm just following. Alessandro hit him again. And this time the man went limp. Alessandro dropped him and turned to his men. 2 of you take him. Keep him alive. I want him to tell Tommy exactly what happens when you touch what's mine. Then he was kneeling beside Clara. His hands were gentle, impossibly gentle, checking her for injuries. Where does it hurt? My leg. I fell. Clara was shaking so hard she could barely speak. They were going to take me, but they didn't. You're safe now. His voice was soft, meant only for her, completely different from the rage he'd just displayed. Can you stand? I don't know. He scooped her up before she could protest, lifting her like she weighed nothing. Clara's arms went around his neck instinctively. This close, she could feel his heart hammering, could smell gunpowder and cologne and something uniquely him. The clinic, she started. Forget the clinic. I'm taking you somewhere safe. He carried her to his SUV, his men forming a protective circle around them. One of the attackers was dead. Another was being loaded into a car, unconscious. The third was bleeding but conscious, zip-tied and shoved into the back of another vehicle. Alessandro settled Clara in the passenger seat, his hands checking her over one more time. You're sure you're not seriously hurt? Just my leg. Same old injury. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. This is insane. This is completely insane. I know. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away tears. I'm sorry, God. Clara, I'm so sorry. I should have had more men on you. I should have. You saved me. She grabbed his wrist, holding his hand against her cheek. If your men hadn't been here, don't think about it. But his jaw was rigid, his eyes haunted. This is my fault. They came after you because of me. Did you pull the trigger? Did you give the order? Clara's voice steadied with anger. No, someone else did this. Someone evil. Don't you dare take responsibility for their choices. Alessandro stared at her like she'd just said something in a foreign language. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers, his eyes closed. You should hate me. I should, Clara whispered. But I don't. Car horn broke the moment. Vinny approached the window. Boss, we need to move. Police will be here soon. Alessandro pulled back, his expression hardening back into the cold mask. Take her to the safe house. Make sure Dr. Chun meets us there to check her over. Where are you going? Clara asked. To have a conversation with Tommy Calibris. The way he said it made Clara's blood run cold. Alessandro, stay safe, Clara. That's all I ask. He closed her door and was gone, climbing into another vehicle. As they drove away, Clara watched him through the rear window, standing in the parking lot, surrounded by his men, blood on his hands and murder in his eyes. She'd always known he was dangerous. But tonight, she'd seen exactly how dangerous and how far he'd go to protect her. The truly terrifying part was, she wasn't sure if that should scare her or make her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. The safe house was a penthouse apartment in a building Alessandro owned. Clean, secure, and empty except for Clara, 2 guards, and Dr. Chun, who pronounced her bruised but not seriously injured. Clara was sitting on the leather couch with an ice pack on her knee when Alessandro returned 3 hours later. His knuckles were split and bloody. His expression was carved from stone. Behind him, 2 of his men dragged someone. Daniel. Clara's ice pack fell to the floor. Danny, what's going on? Tell her, Alessandro said coldly. Tell your sister what you did. Daniel's face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. One eye was swelling shut. Someone had hit him. Clara, I'm sorry. I was trying to help. He set you up. Alessandro's voice could cut glass. He contacted my lieutenant, Rocco, and asked for help getting you to safety. Rocco used that information to arrange tonight's attack. Clara's world tilted. No, Danny wouldn't. I didn't know. Daniel's voice cracked. I swear, Clara, I thought Rocco would help. I thought he could get you away from all this. I didn't know. A sob escaped him. I'm so sorry. You're sorry? Alessandro moved closer, his rage barely contained. She almost died tonight. They were going to use her to destroy me, and you handed them the perfect opportunity. I was trying to protect her from you, Daniel shouted. From the Mafia. From this life. From what exactly? Alessandro's voice dropped dangerously low. From the man paying for her medical treatment? From the guards keeping her alive? Or maybe from the monster you helped create when you sold intelligence to my enemies 8 years ago? Clara's breath caught. What? Daniel's face went white. You didn't think I knew? Alessandro circled him like a predator. Daniel Rossi, low-level runner for my organization. Worked under Marco's crew in 2017 and 2018. Then started selling shipment schedules and protection lists to the Calibris family. Cost me 3 men and $250,000 in product. Danny. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. You told me you worked construction. I lied. Daniel couldn't look at her. I was young and stupid and desperate for money. I got in with Moretti's crew, and when I realized what I'd done, I tried to get out. The Calibris family offered me money for information, and I took it. Tears streamed down his face. Then Mom and Dad died, and you were only 16 and I had to raise you. Moretti's people found out about the betrayal. They were going to kill me. I should have killed you, Alessandro said flatly. But Marco decided an orphaned 16-year-old girl was punishment enough. We let you live on the condition you never entered our territory. never touched our business again. You agreed. I kept that agreement. Daniel's voice rose desperately. For 8 years I stayed away. I went legitimate. I raised Clara, put her through nursing school, gave her a clean life away from all this. I kept my word until tonight. Alessandro grabbed Daniel by the collar, yanking him close. You contacted Rocco. You brought my betrayer and my enemy together. You gave them exactly what they needed to hurt Clara. I didn't know Rocco was dirty. You didn't know because you've been out of the game. Alessandro shoved him back. But you knew enough to know contacting any of my men was a risk. You did it anyway, and she paid the price. Clara stood, her legs screaming in protest. Stop, both of you. Just stop. Alessandro and Daniel turned to look at her. Alessandro. Her voice shook but held firm. You've known about Danny's past for how long? 5 days? And you didn't tell me? I was protecting you. No, you were making decisions for me. Clara's eyes blazed with fury. You think I'm too weak to handle the truth? Too fragile? That's not. And you? She turned to Daniel, tears streaming down her face. A torrent of hurt and betrayal. You lied to me for 8 years. You let me believe you were just some construction worker. Let me think we were safe, normal, clean. I built my whole damn life on a lie. Clara, I was protecting you. Stop protecting me. The shout ripped from her throat, raw and desperate. Both of you. I'm not a child. I'm not some fragile little thing that needs to be wrapped in cotton wool. I'm a grown woman who deserves the truth, even when it's ugly and painful. Silence hung heavy in the room, thick and suffocating. Clara wiped her eyes roughly, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Danny, you were young and scared and you made a mistake. I understand that, but you should have told me. You should have trusted me with the truth. I know. I'm sorry, he mumbled, his voice filled with regret. She turned to Alessandro, her gaze piercing. And you? You knew my brother betrayed you, and you protected me anyway. Why? Because you're not responsible for his sins. But you could have told me. You should have. She met his eyes, unflinching. If this, whatever this is between us is going to be real, it has to be honest. Even when the truth is hard to swallow. Alejandro's jaw worked, a muscle ticking in his cheek. You're right. Clara turned back to Daniel, her voice firm and resolute. Get out. Go home. Think about what you've done and how you're going to fix this. Clara, I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Until then, I need space. Her voice cracked with emotion. From both of you. Alessandro nodded to his men, a silent command. They escorted Daniel out, surprisingly gentle. After the door closed behind him, Alessandro and Clara stood in tense silence, the air crackling with unspoken words. Rocco's dead, Alessandro said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. I took care of it myself, made it public. My other lieutenants understand now that betrayal, any betrayal, ends the same way. But mercy for those who deserve it isn't weakness. He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at her. Your brother deserved mercy. Because of you. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't do it for thanks. I know. Clara moved closer to him despite everything, drawn to him by an invisible force. You did it because you're not the monster you pretend to be. Alejandro's hand came up, cupping her face, his touch surprisingly gentle. I killed a man tonight. Probably will kill more before this is over. I know, she said, not flinching away from his touch. But you also let my brother live when everything in your world said you should kill him. That has to count for something. In my world, it counts as weakness. In mine, Clara whispered, it counts as strength. His thumb traced her cheekbone, his eyes searching hers. You terrify me, Clara Rossi. Good. You terrify me too, she admitted, a flicker of a smile playing on her lips. Maybe that means we're even. For the first time that night, Alessandro almost smiled, a genuine expression of warmth gracing his features. Outside in the hallway, Marco spoke to Vinny in low tones, his voice hushed. He spared the traitor's brother. Killed Rocco without hesitation. The men are talking. Let them talk, Vinny said, his voice dismissive. They saw what happened to Rocco. They'll fall in line. Marco spoke slowly, thoughtfully. Maybe the boss isn't weak. Maybe he's just different now. Is that better or worse? Marco looked through the door at Alessandro, watching Clara with an expression he'd never seen on his boss's face before. Honestly, I have no idea. 2 weeks after the attack, Clara stood in Madison Street Physical Therapy Center, holding on to parallel bars while Dr. Chin watched with a clipboard, meticulously taking notes. "Ready?" Dr. Chin asked, her voice encouraging. Clara nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She released the bars, taking a deep breath. Then she walked. No cane, no support, just her own 2 legs carrying her forward, step by painful step. 1 step, 2 steps, 5, 10. The pain was there, a dull and familiar ache, but manageable. Her gait wasn't perfect. Her left leg still dragged slightly, but she was walking. 15 steps, 20, all the way to the end of the bars. Oh my God. Tears streamed down Clara's face. A mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. "I'm doing it. You're doing it." Dr. Chin laughed, her face beaming with pride. "Clara, this is remarkable progress. 6 more months of therapy, and you might not need the cane at all except for long distances." After the session, Clara didn't call for a car. She walked slowly, carefully, to the address Alessandro had given her. His office building, the legitimate one he used for business meetings, not the headquarters where blood got spilled. The receptionist recognized her immediately. "Ms. Rossi, Mr. Moretti said to send you right up. 20th floor." The elevator ride felt endless, each second stretching into an eternity. Clara's reflection stared back at her from the polished doors. A woman who looked stronger than she felt, braver than she'd been 3 weeks ago. The doors opened to a reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a breathtaking panorama of steel and glass. Alessandro stood with his back to her, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian, his tone urgent. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his eyes widening in surprise. "I'll call you back," he said abruptly, ending the call without waiting for a response. "Clara, you walked here all the way from the clinic?" She couldn't stop smiling, a wide, genuine smile that lit up her face. "No, Dr. Chin says 6 more months, and I might not need it at all." Something flickered across his face, a complex mixture of emotions. Pride, relief, and something deeper, something she couldn't quite name. "That's incredible," he said, his voice soft with admiration. "It's because of you," Clara said, her voice filled with gratitude. "The treatments, the therapy, the best doctor's money can buy. You gave me my life back." "You did the work," he countered, his eyes locking with hers. "The pain, the exercises, the determination. That was all you. But you gave me the chance," she insisted. She stopped a few feet away from him, her gaze unwavering. "I came to thank you and to tell you something." Alessandro's expression guarded itself, his features hardening slightly. "What?" "I know who you are, what you do. The violence, the criminal empire, all of it." Clara's voice was steady, unwavering. "I'm not naive enough to think loving you changes that." His breath caught in his throat, his eyes searching hers. "Loving me?" "Yes." She met his eyes without flinching, her voice filled with conviction. "Somewhere between you paying my restaurant's debt and you killing a man to protect me, I fell in love with you. It's terrifying and probably stupid, but it's true." Alessandro closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his presence suddenly overwhelming. "Clara, I'm not asking you to change," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm not asking you to leave your world." Her hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his. "I'm just asking you to let me in," she whispered, her voice pleading. "The real you, not the monster you show everyone else. Not the man who thinks he has to carry Lucia's ghost forever. Just Alessandro," she finished, her voice filled with tenderness. His forehead pressed to hers, his eyes closed, as if he couldn't bear to look at her. "You deserve better than me." "Maybe, but I don't want better." She squeezed his hand, her grip firm. "I want you," she said, her voice resolute. "You once told me you don't want me to owe you, so I'm choosing this. Choosing you not out of debt or gratitude or fear." Just because when I look at you, I see a man who's capable of terrible things but chooses mercy when it matters. That's enough for me. It shouldn't be enough, he murmured, his voice filled with self-doubt. But it is, Clara said, pulling back to look at him, her eyes shining with love. You can't ignore what I stirred in you. You said that yourself. Well, you can't ignore what you stirred in me either. You made me want to fight again. To heal, to hope. That's not nothing. Alejandro's hands cupped her face like she was something precious, something fragile. I can't promise you safety, he warned, his voice filled with concern. My enemies will always look at you as a weakness. Then we'll face them together, she said, her voice unwavering. I can't promise I'll ever be the man you deserve. I don't want the man I deserve, she countered, her eyes filled with love. I want the man I choose. Clara smiled through her tears, her heart overflowing with emotion. And I choose you, Alessandro Moretti, she declared, her voice filled with conviction. All of you, even the dark parts, she added softly. Especially the dark parts, because those dark parts are trying so damn hard to protect something good. He kissed her then, gentle, reverent, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he wasn't careful. Clara melted into him, her arms around his neck, letting herself fall completely, surrendering to the moment. When they finally broke apart, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her skin. I love you. God help me, Clara. I love you more than I've ever loved anything except Lucia, he confessed, his voice raw with emotion. I know, she smiled, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. And I love you back. We'll figure out the rest, she said, her voice filled with hope. They stood there in the sunlight, bathed in its warm glow. Two broken people who'd somehow made each other whole. A mafia boss who'd learned that mercy wasn't weakness. A woman who'd learned that strength came in unexpected forms. Outside, the city hummed with life, a vibrant tapestry of sounds and sights. Dangerous, complicated, beautiful. And for the first time in 12 years, Alessandro Moretti looked at his world and felt something other than emptiness. He felt hope, a fragile but powerful emotion. Clara took his hand, her touch grounding him. Walk with me, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Where? Anywhere. Everywhere, she replied, her voice filled with a sense of adventure. She grinned, her smile infectious. I'm just getting used to this whole walking thing. Might as well show off. Alessandro laughed, a real laugh, genuine and warm, and let her lead him toward whatever came next, embracing the uncertainty of the future. Behind them, through the window, the city stretched endlessly, a concrete jungle teeming with life. Ahead of them lay danger, enemies, complications neither could predict. But they'd face it together, the devil and his waitress, walking forward into an uncertain future, their hands clasped tightly. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough.